And I think if you just run one session this fall, or maybe two, that's kind of all it takes. Then I think you will discover that writing is really more fun together.
Hello there, my name is Monica Burns, and welcome to today's bonus episode of the Easy EdTech podcast. If you're used to joining me on Tuesdays for new episodes, you are in for a treat. This is a special bonus episode of the podcast in partnership with WeWillWrite. Just like on Tuesdays, these bonus episodes are designed to give you ideas you can try yourself, share with a colleague, or bookmark for later in the school year. If we mention something you'd like to check out, you'll find the link to it in the show notes, so don't forget to head to my website, easyedtechpodcast.com, for all the links and resources from today's episode. This episode is sponsored by WeWillWrite. Getting a whole class genuinely excited to write is hard, and WeWillWrite is built to make it easier. WeWillWrite is a writing platform for K-12 classrooms where the whole class writes at the same time, reads each other's work, and votes on the best ones. That mix of friendly competition and low pressure gets even your most reluctant writers off the starting line. It takes minutes to set up, and you can try it for free at WeWillWrite.com. That's WeWillWrite.com. On today's bonus episode, I chat with Erlend Klouman Høiner and Bonnie Watson about building a writing routine for your students that will actually ask you to launch in your writing classroom. They will be so excited about this. I've seen WeWillWrite in action at ISTE this year, and I'm confident that you will get plenty of inspiration from today's conversation. Erlend is a former teacher and one of the co-founders of WeWillWrite, a platform for short live writing sessions. And Bonnie is a fourth grade language arts teacher whose students greet her at the door asking to play WeWillWrite. In our conversation, we dig into how quick, super fun writing verse can put every student on equal footing, build a classroom community in those first few weeks of school, and make growth visible to students and families across the year. Let's jump into the conversation. Erlend, can you start us off with what inspired WeWillWrite?
Yes, I would love to do that. And it really starts with our founder, Daniel, and his own kids. So years ago, he built this reading game called Poyo because his youngest son was born with a hearing impairment. And the experts back then, they said that, cracking the reading code for him would take him longer. So back then, Daniel's idea was simple. Make learning to read so fun that his son would want to do it on his own. And that worked, and Poyo later became part of Kahoot. And so WeWillWrite came from kind of the exact same place, basically. It's, later in school, Daniel watched his boys lose motivation, really, the moment writing showed up and I've been working as a teacher as well, so I know this, at least in Norway, this is the case. And because writing tends to be taught as these kind of long, complex assignments that stretch over weeks. And that is not motivating for anyone, really. And so he wanted something that his own kids would, nag him to do again and again, until one day they would look up and realize that they had become good writers. So, that is the whole idea. Ignite the urge to write and then let the volume of practice do its work, basically.
I love that framing, right, in that personal experience and the classroom observations that you've had. Bonnie, can you share with us a bit about what your day-to-day looks like as a classroom teacher?
So I teach fourth grade language arts, and that's 3 language arts classes each day. And every single time I greet the kids at the door, the first question is, can we play WeWillWrite? Because that is the thing that has made them love to write more than anything. And so I use it all the time. I use it even when I'm not teaching writing. I'll use it for like subjects that I'm teaching because the kids want to be part of that. But writing has always been my favorite thing to teach, and this has just made it so much more exciting. It makes it exciting for them and me. It's always been exciting for me. Now it's exciting for them.
I love that example that you gave too, right? Of in the ELA classroom, but also the writing across different subject areas. I taught fifth grade for about 7 years, and just the ELA part of our day, was not the only place where we were doing writing, right? Like it's happening in lots of different ways. So I love that connection too for educators who might be coming in, with their own classroom experiences, or listeners who support lots of different educators. So for someone who hasn't heard of WeWillWrite before, can you walk listeners through what it is and how it works in a classroom?
Sure. WeWillWrite is basically a platform for short live writing sessions in the classroom. And the way it works is that the teacher picks a writing set, which is usually 3 or 4 short writing challenges, and starts a session on the class screen. So, and then students join on any device, they have with a pin, no accounts, no logins, a bit like Kahoot in that sense. And they get put into anonymous teams, and each challenge opens with an image and a short prompt to spark an idea. And then they write in short timed bursts, usually 2 to 4 minutes. And after that, they read a couple of their teammates' texts anonymously. This is anonymously in the classroom, although the teacher knows who wrote the text. And then they vote on the best one. And the winning text from each team goes up on the big screen for a class finale. And then the teacher reads them aloud, and the whole class votes on the texts. And then you do it again for the next challenge. And, the magic is in that loop, I think, that you write, and then you read what everyone else wrote, and then you just get better at just seeing that and talking about it and discussing it and getting those, I guess, teachable moments. So in this sense, I mean, writing is definitely more fun together. Yeah.
No, and that idea, when I'm, again, with a classroom teacher hat on, with an instructional, right, coaching, right, view or lens, right, also, right, just that idea of bringing everyone together. And that's one thing that I think is really different with WeWillWrite, is that the whole class writes at the same time, like you said, right, on that equal footing. If someone's thinking about kind of back to school, right, or starting the school year in those first weeks when a class is still finding its feet, right? Still trying to figure out what the year is going to look like together. How does that shared experience help build connection?
Yes, I can answer that. And I think that because this is, the part I care most about, I think. Everyone has the same challenge. It's the same kind of challenge that we give them. The same few minutes, the same situation. Nobody gets like a different version because some adult decided they needed it. And because it is anonymous, all the usual, social hierarchies fall away, or that's our goal at least. And a student nobody expected can win the class finale simply because their classmates, voted for their text, not for the person in a way. And that is an enormous boost, and it happens in front of everyone, right? So the short timer matters here too. Because one more point about that, with the 2 minutes on the clock, nobody has time to polish their spelling, so the kids who struggles with spelling and the kid who finds it easy are suddenly writing on the same footing with the same messy first draft. That is, real inclusion, not individual accommodation.
Yeah.
So, and when your classmates pick your words, you feel genuinely valued by your peers. And I think that shared level experience is what builds belonging in those, first weeks, far more than anything tailored just for one student. So that's I think that's what builds the connection.
Yeah. And, I love that example too, right? Of you're working quick, right? And that timer allows for, right, some of those things that might come up when you're refining your draft. Like, we're just working quick. It doesn't matter if I have a punctuation error. We're just working quick. And I know when I used to model for my fifth graders, that kind of, I'm doing this while I'm talking, so I might make a mistake, right? Like, I'm showing you this, like, and I'm just trying my best. I'm not focused on spelling, right? You're modeling those things so much, right, as an educator. And before I ask you, Bonnie, about some classroom stories, Erlend, can you tell us a bit about, the consistency and the routine piece. I know you talk a lot about consistency and routine when it comes to writing. Why is that philosophy so central to We Will Write?
Well, I think also just what you said with modeling,
Mhm.
we as teachers do so much modeling. And a lot of times when we're modeling, they're zoning out. But
Right.
We Will Write, the kids are doing the modeling and they're glued into it. So
Mhm.
Yeah.
they're seeing so much more than their teacher's example up on the board and taking
Yep.
that back. They're seeing their peers do really cool things and then get shout outs for the really cool things that they're doing. And it
Yep.
instantly makes them go, "Oh, I want to do that too." And so
Mm.
it's I've never seen it happen so quickly with the growth because they're constantly seeing models of good writing, and then sometimes they're seeing models that are not so good, and they're noticing, "Ooh, that's not what I want my writing to look like
Right.
either."
Mm.
And they're getting that language together because of all of the discussion that just immediately happens that never happened before when we were just sitting with our journals and everyone's reading out loud what they wrote and people were
Mhm.
like, "Oh, that was good. Yay." And you move on. Instead, it's like, check out all these adjectives that this guy put in his, or look at the figurative language that really made this piece come to life. And it's so frequent that it just kind of becomes second nature to them, to the point where like they're picking those things out of each other's writing, even when we're not playing We Will Write anymore, because it's what their language has
Yeah.
become.
Mhm.
And
Absolutely.
yeah, sorry, I agree. That's kind of the power of inductive learning, that you have all
Mhm.
these examples from your classmates instead of learning the theory and then kind of trying to recognize it or try to apply it in your own writing. So this is really powerful. I think that you kind of you look at all the examples that your classmates are writing, and then you can see the patterns. You can learn how it is to write well, basically.
Right, and just
Well,
that
and also,
routine. Mhm. Yeah, go for it, Bonnie. Mhm.
well, before, like, writing is a really hard thing for teachers to grade because it's, you might like something, somebody else might like something. It's hard to
Mhm.
see the growth. And with We Will Write, it's so clear where the growth is because you have this like great measurable experience where you can go back and look at the We Will Write prompts they did in the beginning of the year
Mhm.
and then look where they are now and show the kids and show their parents and say, like, this is how they were writing when the year started and this is how they're writing now, and
Mm.
everyone can see
Mhm.
that growth so much. And I think that that component of being able to see your growth shows you what you've actually done, and it's really inspiring, more than just saying
Mhm.
like, "Hey, you got, an 85 on this writing prompt in the beginning of the
Right.
year, and now you're getting 97s." Like, what does that mean?
Mm.
Nothing. But when
Mm.
they're like truly able to see it, because I always do the same writing prompt in the beginning of the year and then I do it again at the end, and the
Mhm.
kids are blown away. They're like, "I can't believe I wrote this in August and now I can do this." And so it's just, I think that whole piece of what they're not just seeing how their peers are getting better, they're seeing how they're getting better, and they're really proud of it.
Mm.
Just, and like you both, said, and that's a great example too, Bonnie, right, of what it can happen when you have that routine, when you have that consistency, like you're able to compare, right? You're able to see that growth over time. And the students are really in the flow. And, you shared a few ways that things are different for you now, right, compared to the past. And that example you gave of just having a student, right, maybe read aloud to share right at the end of a lesson is very different than what you can do now. Can you walk us through what it actually looks like when you use We Will Write with your students? What does a typical lesson look like from start to finish?
Definitely. So I like to use different kinds of resources as we're going through. So if we're going to do a We Will Write session on like creating a character, then I'll have a list of character traits sitting there at their tables with them so that
Mhm.
they're kind of getting to brainstorm different vocabulary that they might use within it. And then we always talk about what is a goal that you have for yourself today. And there may be a goal that I have, like, okay, everyone today has to include figurative language. And if you
Mhm.
don't have a simile in your essay, we're not voting for it. So it may be great, but if you didn't put a simile, we're not doing it. But then I want the kids to also come up with a goal for themselves. And so they'll think about like, oh, I need more capitals and periods, or whatever it is that they're working on. And I feel like that piece is really important. And then we go through and I put it up on the screen and we go through each prompt that we're about to do. And it has all of the tips that WeWillWrite has included. And then we get the discussion going. So they're kind of brainstorming and they're ready to get started. And then once we start, it's so great because the kids are hyped and they're like, yes, we get to do this. And they're loud and they're talking. And then as soon as that timer goes, it's this beautiful silence. And all you hear is click, 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 click. And they're just like, you look around the room and they're smiling while they're writing. And, and I have some kids with dyslexia who will run out the door and they'll sit right outside the door and they'll do their voice to text. I have a couple kids who sit at their desks and still do voice to text. They're because it works and they're fine to do it that way. But some kids like their privacy when they do it. So we do both. And then everybody's just brilliantly silent and they have to write the entire time. I don't let them stop. So even if they think they're finished, what could you add to it? And then everybody runs back in and then it's just excitement while we're reading and voting. And I'm walking around and reading what the kids have written and kind of helping kids see what is good about a prompt. Sometimes they, especially like in fourth grade, sometimes they're like, they just want to vote. And so I have to remind them like, no, we're really actually looking for the best ones because you will get mad if there's 4 up there and one of them's not good. And then we really talk about that. And then once the voting happens, that's where it just becomes so magical because the kids, I read them and the little literary devices that come up on the screen while we're reading them, that immediately gives me language that I may not have thought of. Like, when devices will be up there that, here's onomatopoeia. Maybe we haven't talked about that yet this year. But here's a great opportunity to have a little mini lesson on what that is. And that has also made it to where like we don't learn something in isolation and then we don't talk about it again for 6 weeks. It's like we learn them in these quick little blips and they're constantly coming up. And so it's becoming their vocabulary too. And then the kids vote and they're not allowed to tell each other who this one belongs to. It's all anonymous. And once the ones have been voted for, like you can kind of tell who it belonged to because they're like, ooh.
Right, of course, especially in a fourth, fifth grade environment, right? Or maybe even adults.
One of the very best parts is when the prompt is done after they're typing and the timer goes off, you hear this collective either like, oh, because they didn't finish, or it's yes, like
just in time, right?
Something you hear when you're like, okay, write a journal entry about this. When time's up, they're not like, they're not passionate about it. And these kids are so passionate when the timer goes off. And so then at the end of the class, when everything we've read, we've gone through everybody's, there's always 10 kids who are like, mine wasn't up there. Will you please read it? And so we have to stop and read all these ones that they're so proud of. And they are just, they're taking so much pride in their writing and loving it so much. And so I can't teach without it now. And so I really need WeWillWrite to always exist because it's changed my life completely. It's changed these kids' lives and they love it. And I did a survey at the beginning of the year and one at the end of the year about like, do you feel confident as a writer? Do you know how to start a topic sentence? Do you know what your teacher's expecting of you? How do you feel about revisions? Do you know what to revise? And in the beginning of the year, they were all just ones of nothing, that they didn't understand anything. And at the end of the year, when I did it, everybody was like, I'm a confident writer with a 5. I know exactly how to revise my writing. I know exactly what to do when my teacher's telling me to add figurative language. Like, it was so exciting to see how this has just developed little writers, and kids who thought they hated writing love it.
And just that start to finish that you gave to of what it looks like logistically, right? Which is important for people to understand. But throughout that description, so much of what you shared was about the energy in the room, right? The students getting excited, them having the pride in their work, right? Them really being bought into, getting in the flow, right, of writing, which can be really hard to do, and doing a lot of things that I think back to as a classroom teacher, showing exemplars and non-exemplars, having the rubric, and we're going thoroughly. Does this have a simile? Does this not have a simile? And just to create such an authentic, high energy experience for students. And this kind of gets to the next question I wanted to ask you, Erlend, around the prep time for something that's so dynamic. One thing that really stands out about WeWillWrite is that it's described as a low prep experience. So what makes this genuinely so easy to pick up and run with?
I think that it's a few things. It's first, maybe the content is already there. So you open the library, you pick a ready-made set for your grade, and you're basically ready. So there's no lesson to build from scratch if you don't want to. So and second, there's nothing much to set up for the kids. No account, no rostering, and they just type a pin and then they're in. And so it's easier for them to join on whatever school device the school has. And I think third, the structure does much of the classroom management for you. Not everything, I think.
But, right.
But it does. The structure is very structured. So the timer, the teams, the voting, it all keeps kind of things moving in a pace that I think that the students like. They don't always like the teacher to talk too much.
Right.
And there's even a simulator so that you can preview the whole session by yourself before you run it with the students. And so the teacher's job maybe shifts away from kind of the prep towards the good part, and that is kind of walking around, and maybe encouraging, and then kind of leading a great conversation about writing when you look at it together and discussing it, and as Bonnie has been talking about. So you can actually, and so that's the thing, you can actually decide to run it at 9 and be running it at 9:05 maybe.
Right.
Absolutely. And for sub plans, it's great because just turn that on and the sub has a great plan already. And you can, because you can make your own prompts, you can spend as much time planning as you need or as little. And I've come into the class before without a WeWillWrite plan and had the kids mad at me because I'm teaching it with something else, and they beg. And so I'll say, okay, hold on, I'll make one real quick. And so I'll turn in whatever activity I was planning on doing in a different way, and I'll type it up really fast and then hit go and we play. And so even that has worked.
And Bonnie, I wanted to ask you too about back to school, right? Like, the beginning of the school year, such a critical time for setting routines. Why is writing one of those habits worth establishing from, let's say, day one?
It's so important for the kids to be able to communicate through writing. Now they have to do it in math and social studies and everywhere else. And I find every year that it's like they've completely forgotten punctuation that they've learned their entire lives. And, so starting it right away like that, it really helps to show that growth from beginning to end, that you can see, here's your before, here's your after. And that's one of the things that I do at my parent conferences, is show the before and after so that they have that to look at to see their growth. And I think if you don't start that right away, it's a lot harder to see exactly how much they've grown.
Yeah, so much of the benefit, right, of being able to share data with families and going beyond the numbers, right, having like really concrete examples to point to, right, is right measuring right over time. So starting right at the beginning of the school year is fantastic, especially if you're building it into like, this is how we start the day, or this is our routine on Thursdays, like, or whatever it might be. Yep. Now, before we, finish up together today and talk about where listeners can learn more about WeWillWrite and jump in and get started, Erlend, can you talk about what it looks like when a teacher commits to running WeWillWrite regularly across a term or a full school year? What are you kind of hearing? What are you seeing when there's that level of commitment?
Yes, I mean, this is where it compounds. At the teacher who makes it a weekly ritual,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
starting in the fall, it's not running like a one-off fun activity. They are running, although it is fun, I think, for the
Of
students,
course. Yeah.
but they are running a systematic writing practice, right?
Mhm.
So one thing teachers love to do is, to use, as you were talking about, Bonnie, the same prompt, the same challenge in September and again in the spring. And then you can see the difference in what students produce. And it is, as you say, it's striking. They have evolved a lot. So both to the teacher and to the kids themselves, basically. And along the way you get what we have, which is called teacher insights. So you can actually see growth and you spot maybe who needs a little support without grading a single stack of papers, and the culture shifts, or that's what we want this to do, that the culture can shift. So the students start asking to write, instead of maybe not looking that much forward to it if it's like a high stakes, like one big essay, So, and that's all about consistency as well. It becomes like a part of, as you said, like in small blips, it's become like a routine that is very, low stakes. And they stay in at recess to finish a piece or read what their classmates wrote maybe. And by the time the spring testing window rolls around, writing is not like a thing they dread, I think, and it's a thing they're good at, and a thing they own, like exactly like Bonnie was talking about. And that payoff is exactly, why starting in the fall is important, and why it matters so much to keep that.
Yeah.
Well, and on that note too, our last day of school, our end of the year party was WeWillWrite. And they were so excited. But like, if I would have told them our end of the year party is going to be to write 4 paragraphs, they would have been so angry. But instead, I told them our end of the year party is to write 4 paragraphs, but playing WeWillWrite. And they were screaming and going berserk because it was their last WeWillWrite all together. And like, I feel like that's a testament to how a writing program is working.
I was just going to say that, right? I had the same words to say that. What a testament. I was about to say that, Bonnie, to just the commitment, right? To starting the year strong, to building that community and introducing a space where they're excited, right? To jump into it, and there's that, of course, more than just a bonus, right? That they are connecting back to all of the goals, right? That you have for them as students. So I am just so appreciative of both of your time jumping in today and joining me for this episode. Anyone who's listening, there will be plenty of links for them to click on and explore. But for anyone who's maybe, on the move and making that mental bookmark, where can listeners learn more about WeWillWrite and get started?
Well, I think the easiest is to just go to WeWillWrite.com and sign up. It's free to start, and there's a 30-day free premium trial, and schools that want to run a pilot can get more trial time as well. So that's the easy.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect next step, right?
Do it. They just need to do it. There's no reason not to. And it's like, if it doesn't go well the first time, do it again, because sometimes it takes like a little bit of learning for, just how you're going to manage things. But I promise you, absolutely worth it.
And I think if you just run one session this fall, or maybe 2, that's kind of all it takes. And then I think you will discover that writing is really more fun together.
And what a perfect message to finish up on today. Thank you both so much for your time and your energy and sharing all of these great ideas with listeners.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
This was such a fun conversation. Plenty of strategies and tips for you to try out. Let's finish up like we always do with a few key points on how to make this EdTech easy. Make writing so fun that students want to practice on their own. Use short, timed writing bursts so all students are working from the same messy first draft. Let students see models of strong and not so strong writing from their peers. Lean on anonymous teams and peer voting so classmates vote for the text, not the person. Remember, you can find the show notes and full list of resources from this episode by heading to easyedtechpodcast.com. You'll find all the ways to connect with the WeWillWrite team there too. Thanks again to WeWillWrite for sponsoring today's episode. If you want writing to be the lesson your students actually ask for, head to WeWillWrite.com and set up a free account today. I think you'll be surprised by what your quietest students come up with when everyone starts from the same blank page. WeWillWrite, ignite the urge to write. If you're listening to this podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or another favorite podcast app, don't forget to hit the follow button. When you follow along with the podcast, each new episode will download for you automatically so you don't miss a thing. And if you have a moment and are feeling extra helpful today, please leave a rating or review for the podcast. It helps other educators find this podcast when they're searching for topics like writing or ed tech in their podcast app. Have a great week and check back on Tuesday morning for next week's new episode of the Easy EdTech Podcast.